Guy Britton here with Ilio. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at THU V2 and seeing if we can use it to create a jangly indie pop style guitar tone, perfect for that sort of dream pop indie sound. So without further ado, let's jump in and take a look at what's going on. So we're going to be looking at this riff here today, which is literally a 2-note riff. It doesn't get any more simple than this. It's the most simple guitar part that you're ever going to hear in your life. And we're going to see if we can transform this into something ethereal, dreamy, huge sounding, just using THU V2. So let's take a listen to what this riff is doing. It's just a DI Telecaster, no processing, no pedals or anything like that, just straight into an interface. And we're going to use THU to shape this up. So let's take a listen to what this is doing. So as you can hear, super simple, literally 2 notes repeating, following that main synth line, but we want to expand this into something really dreamy, kind of on the edge of breakup, quite ethereal, uplifting guitar tone. So the first thing I'm going to do is insert a stereo instance of THU V2, and you'll see that by default it loads up with this dark face 65 Fender style amp, along with the presets down the left and all the models down the right. This version 2 of THU is laid out in a bit of a different way, and there's some really cool new workflows, which I'll show you more later on as we go in the video. The first thing I'm going to do is just close this preset window over here, and then I'm also going to delete what's in this chain and build this completely from scratch to show you how easy it is to build a guitar tone and just what amazing features are in this V2 of THU. So the original guitar track on this track was actually recorded with a Fender Pro Junior, and I'm trying to recreate that sound. We had a bunch of pedals and some ambient reverb stuff going on in post-processing, and I want to see if I can recreate all of that within THU. So what I want to do is head over to this amp model section down here. And what's really cool in V2 is if I just go to this search bar and I type in Fender, it comes up with all the Fender related amps. We have the bass Face 59, the dark Face 65, and the Tweed Deluxe. Now, as I say, this was recorded originally on a Fender Pro Junior, so I want to try and recreate that kind of thing, and I think the Tweed Deluxe is going to get us close to that. So let's go add that and then add the matching cabinet as well, and you'll see that it brings up the Tweed Deluxe as well as this Deluxe amp with a microphone on it, an SM57 in this case. What's great about THU V2 is it has this new multi-row model, so I can drag this cab or any other elements of the chain down onto different rows. And if I zoom out, then I can have loads of different stuff going on, and it's all in different rows, and it makes the workflow much easier than just having everything in a line and having to constantly scroll across and see different things. So that's really cool. It's a nice improvement. I think that's going to help with the workflow, particularly as we start to add more pedals and more effects. But in the meantime, let's take a listen to what this sounds like. Straight away, it sounds like my Fender amp. It's like on the edge of breakup, nice and bright, kind of jangly. It's already heading in the right direction. So if I head over to this cab on the right now, you'll see that it comes up with this logo in the right-hand corner. And what that is the fluid IR setting. And in the settings, basically, we can enable or disable fluid IRs. And as the pop-up says here, fluid IRs are supercharged impulse responses, which also reproduce the dynamics and nonlinear responses of the speaker. This is not possible with standard IRs, enable for increased realism and immersion. And basically what it does is it gives you a much better sounding cab and a much more realistic sounding impulse response, which I think you can hear straight away. It sounds really realistic to me just with the amp and the cab. Already sounds a lot like I would expect a guitar to actually sound through an amp. So let's take a look at the mics. As before, if we double click on this, it's going to bring up a list of different microphones that we can use. It starts with the American 57, like an SM57 style. But let's see what the California 121 sounds like. Yeah, I really like the sound of that 121, the ribbon mic style. It's got a bit of extra breakup to it. The others felt a little bit clean. The differences are quite subtle, but I do think that one sounds the best for this kind of style. You'll also notice if I double click on this A over here, it brings up this menu, which gives us way more options. So we can change the angle of the mic. We can add high pass filter, low pass filter, different levels of ambience. What we do have as well is this IR setting up here. So we can load different IRs that are recorded impulse responses through microphones. So we have this Recabinet Damien 212, for example, which has 57 cap grill, 57 cone grill, edge 45 grill. So let's take a listen to what these different ones sound like. I really like this preset, even though it's not actually necessarily matched to the amp and the cabinet. I think that sounds really good. It sounds quite realistic to me, and that sounds like a good starting point to build the rest of the tone from. And the amazing thing is just how many different tonal options there are for creating guitar tones. You know, we could mix and match all of these, have a second mic in there, change the angle, change the pan, do all kinds of different stuff. And it's just going to give us so many different tonal options. But for now, let's go with that. I like how that's sounding, and let's build the rest of the guitar tone out. What I should mention as well is, as easy as it was to pull up that Fender amp, if we wanted to change it and have, say, a Vox style amp, we could type Vox and it would give us the top 30 AC30 style. Or if I wanted, say, Marshall amps, it gives me the whole list of Marshall inspired amps, or Mesa Boogie, whatever. You can see how easy it is just to try different guitar tones, find different amp styles, all based off of actual modeled amplifiers. And this search function is a game changer. That makes it so easy now. So what I want to do next is try and thicken this guitar tone a bit by adding in a subtle octave below. So I'm just going to type octave here. You'll see it brings up these two different pedals. I'm going to go with the legacy octave pedal, and I'm going to add that in before the amp in the chain over here. Then let's just drag this down to this row so it makes the workflow a bit easier. And let's hear what this sounds like. Yeah, cool. That's enough just to thicken it up and give it a bit more warmth and a bit more depth. I feel like we just need to shape that tone a little bit more now and make it sit in the pocket. So I'm going to bring up an EQ pedal. In this case, I'm going to use the 7-band G EQ. I'm going to place that after the octave in the chain and before the amp. And then let's take a look at what we can do just to maybe thin it out a bit in that lower mid-range where there's quite a lot going on there, and maybe take out some harshness as well. Yeah, that sounds a lot better. I think that's going to sit in the track a lot easier, particularly if we want to add some reverbs and delays later on. If we have too much low mid and low end, those reverbs are just going to be like taking over the mix. It's going to sound really muddy, and it's going to make the guitar really lack definition. So if we can just take out a lot of that boxiness and some of that like low end below 100 hertz, as well as this boxiness in these low mids, is going to make everything sit in the track much easier later on. So what I want to do now is add some modulation to this and give it a bit more of an affected sound. So let's go and see, what have we got? Chorus. What chorus have we got? Let's go with the Dimension C here. Let's just chuck that in. Let's put it after the EQ. No, let's put it before the EQ. And let's take a listen to what this sounds like. Yeah, that's nice. That's like not overly chorusy or overly modulated, but it's just the right amount. You'll notice I was flicking between mono and stereo there, and I'm going to keep it in mono. And the reason for that is because I want to try using the doubler, which is in this version of THU V2. You'll see if I bring up this master control section, we have all these different options. And right over here on the right is this doubler. So if I turn this on, you'll notice that it creates a much wider sound. It gives it the effect as if it was a doubled guitar. And according to Overloud, this is not just a simple kind of copy of the original signal, pan left and right and delayed slightly. There are different algorithmic things going on that create subtle variations in the double, which is going to give it a much more realistic sound as if it was played like a doubled guitar part. So let's take a listen to what this is doing. That doubler is doing so much for the production to help the track feel bigger, more alive. Without it, it's just this sort of strange guitar part that sits in the middle and kind of gets in the way. And with that doubler on, it feels wide, but it also feels realistic. It doesn't feel like I've just got any old kind of basic doubler going on where it feels a bit chorusy and a bit like fake. It does feel like a doubled guitar part, which is really nice. You'll notice also in this panel we have this transpose section here. If I turn this on now and just solo the track, you'll see I can quickly transpose things down to 5 semitones or up 3 semitones, and it sounds really realistic. That sounds great to me, and it doesn't have all the artifacts of the usual pitch shifted guitar tone. I think whilst it may not necessarily have a place in this mix, that particular feature, I could see how you could use that to create some really cool effects, different kind of modulated warped guitar tones, and also just for, even if I was writing and I was in the kind of early stages of demoing, I wanted to quickly change the key of something and just see how it sounded with a vocalist. This is great for doing that because it sounds realistic. We also have this high quality mode as well, which we can up the quality even more, or we can keep it off for low latency processing so you could play through it like that. So I think that's a really good basis for a guitar tone. We have the octave pedal, we have this dimension pedal, this 7-band EQ, and then this Fender style amp. And that's a really good starting point. And I think that's probably everything that we need in terms of the sort of pre-amp and amp stage. What I want to do now is start building the effects that are coming after the amp, giving it extra width, extra dreaminess, and really nailing that kind of dream pop guitar tone. So first what I want to do is add some kind of delay to this. So if I just type delay down here, let's go for something kind of analog, like let's try this tape delay. Just drag this over here to the end of the chain. So everything that we're doing now is going to come after that chain. And let's take a listen to what this sounds like. This is really cool. This modulation is great. You can use this to modulate the mix, the time, or the filter. And in this case, I'm modulating the time. And because it's an analog model delay, whenever we change the time of the delay, we're also changing the pitch of it. So it's adding this slight wobble and this kind of variation to it, which is really nice. It just gives it a bit of edge and it makes it a bit more interesting and adds to that modulated dreaminess that I'm going for. So now let's add some reverb to this. I'm going to go and see what we've got here. I really like the shimmer verb. I've used this before with THU and it sounds great. So let's add that in and take a listen to what this sounds like. Yeah, cool. That's really good. It's quite subtle. I'm not really cranking that shimmer effect because I think it sounds like a little overbearing if we have too much of it. But just a small amount of it with a long decay time here, just floating in the background, adds to that ethereal feel. And I really like what that's doing. So just to round this off now, I'm going to add in some hall reverb to sit it back in the mix a little bit more and make sure it's not overwhelming. Let's dial this in the context of the mix and see what it sounds like. Yeah, cool. That's a really interesting effect. You can hear that this hall reverb just helps to soften that guitar and push it back in the mix a touch. And because the guitar in this track is not the main feature necessarily, it's sort of part of a block of sounds that includes that synth which is playing the same riff, and then we have the guitar playing that riff. I don't necessarily want it to be right up front or else it's going to take over. In the context of this sort of dream pop thing, you want it to sit in the background, and that whole reverb really helps just to move it back and give the whole mix some more dimension. Lastly, I just want to tuck it in the mix a bit more, so I'm going to grab an EQ. In this case, let's go for this parametric EQ, and we'll add that at the end of the chain, and then let's just dial this in to sit the guitar back in the mix a little bit more and bring the whole mix together. Yeah, great. That EQ sounds really natural. That high shelf is just helping boost some of that jangly dreaminess, and that mid-range cut here is just taking away some harshness, losing some of this low end, low mid build up, which is just kind of making the guitar sound a bit too thick. And I really like what that's doing. It sounds very natural. It doesn't sound overly boosted or kind of too brittle. I think that's a really smooth sounding EQ. And what I love about THU V2 is We can do so much just within this window. You know, I've added these great sounding reverbs, this EQ, I've done all of this stuff as well as the amp simulation. I've also managed to do a load of mix work within the plugin, and it means that I don't have to rely on loads of external plugins, loads of third-party stuff, which is just amazing. I can do it all within one window. I like things to be succinct and to be streamlined and the workflow to be kind of within one place, and it's just amazing that I can do all of this stuff within this window and come away with a guitar tone which sounds really realistic and really natural. So I definitely recommend you go and check out THU V2. It's available right now, and if you're already a THU user, then any new THU purchase, whether it's a made in rock pack, an artist signature rig, or even a rig library, all of these will automatically upgrade you to V2. And if you're new to THU, then all THU products are already V2, so definitely go and check it out. In the meantime, drop me a comment below. Let me know how you're liking this new version of THU. As always, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.